So, you want to be hired on as a dispatcher or at a police department? You want to help people? Well, what do you need to know? Well, today we're going to go through some things that you need to get hired on, some of the requirements to go through the interview process and everything, and just kind of some things to expect as you go through the process. And then, hopefully, once you get hired on, some things you can expect or things that I want to let you guys know so that way you know what you're walking into. We'll start with kind of just the basics of what you need. So, in order to become a 911 dispatcher or to work at a police department, um, first thing you need, of course, high school diploma or GED. That's the basic, right? If you're wanting to be a police officer, of course, you have to go through the academy process and things like that. Um, with the dispatcher thing, you don't have to. It's something that you'll get all of your training on the job and kind of paid for by that department, right? So, as far as being a dispatcher, really not that many educational requirements. I mean, just the high school diploma and GED. One thing that I want you to be prepared for, though, is if you want to go through this, is there's not any pre-required educational requirements, but expect to go to training for the rest of your life. Pretty much every year, you're going to go to some type of training or do some type of training. Number one, to keep up your certificate. Number two, to learn more skills and build up your experience and your knowledge. And same can be said for officers as well, in the fact that you are never truly done training. You'll always have more training to go to and more things that you can learn. It's a constant learning process, and you'll see something. If you were to start today, you'll see something that you didn't know about or something you never really thought about to do, or a different way to do things 30 years from now than you would today. So it's constantly a learning experience. We'll start with some of the bad before we get into like what to expect during the interview process. Uh, things that I wish people knew about 911 dispatching. We've had several people um, quit or not make it through the training process because of these reasons. A lot of times, now in smaller departments like us, we also have high command or high brass or whatever you want to call it, lieutenants, the chief, whoever on the hiring board, along with hopefully some dispatchers. Now, police very much have the mindset of they're the ones that are receiving the most trauma. No one else can have any. Sounds bad saying it, right? But the dispatching career can sometimes be traumatic and in many different ways. And a lot of people try and downplay that because oh, you're just over a phone, like you're just answering phone calls. What can be traumatic about that? Um, let me tell you, some of these calls, when someone wants to talk to you just so they can self exit with you talking to them on the phone, or when you hear a parent that's just lost a child, when you hear someone burning alive in a car, it it can be traumatic. Number one, because the sounds, the soundscape in a lot of these environments can be a lot. And I've been on both sides of it. I've been on the volunteer fire department. I've worked on an ambulance, and now I'm in dispatch. I've seen it in person, and I've also heard it over the phone. To me, personally, hearing it over the phone is much more traumatic than in person because there's nothing I can do over the phone. There's literally nothing I can do. I can just listen and update the units on the way. That's all I can do. I can't try and help. I can't rush in there and do anything. I am just on the phone having to listen to it. Now, a lot of people would say that's, a little overboard or overdramatic, and everybody has their own traumas, everybody. And they have to deal with it in different ways. And as long as you deal with it in a healthy way, I would say. But that's something that I wish more new people knew, because it's something that we've had a few people that have backed out of it during training because they've taken a rough call. Um, and like I said, traumatic things can be on a whole spectrum of things, right? Because of course, if you have to go to the scene and deal with it yourself, it is going to be traumatic. Sometimes the soundscape can too, right? And you also have to deal with the people that don't believe that it is at all. So just be prepared for that. Also, scheduling, I would say, is another point that I'm fine with it. A lot of people would say that that's one of the biggest drawbacks to dispatching is especially in a smaller center when you don't have people that can be called in or cover as much. Sometimes you're gonna have to work when you really don't want to. Sometimes you're gonna have to work on holidays. When you first start out, you may start out on a shift that you really don't want to be on. This is not something. I'm not saying that it can't be done, but I'm saying if you're, for instance, a single mother trying to get a dispatching job, I would really highly consider looking into it and understanding that your schedule is going to be all kinds of messed up. Think about the child care you're going to have to pay for. Think about all of the things that you need because sometimes you'll be called in when it's inconvenient. When you're in training, you're going to go through all of the shifts. So days, swings, nights, you're going to participate and go through training on each one of those shifts. So for the first 3 or 4 months, you're going to be swapping around all over the place. A month here, a month there, and a month on the other one. Just keep that in mind. If you have to plan childcare, if you have to do any of that, keep in mind it's a chaotic schedule. And then, like I said, once you get out of training, you probably won't get the shift you want because everybody ahead of you is is more on the seniority scale than you are, right? So your people that have been there 30 years are going to get the first pick, and your people that have 15 are going to get the next, and the tens and the fives, and then you, brand new. So just keep that in mind whenever you apply. Is the schedule is going to be chaotic? You're going to have to work holidays. The trauma aspect to it. So it's not sunshine and roses. It's not always being the hero and helping people, much like any other emergency service. TV shows make it look great. TV shows make it look like you're saving lives every single second and you're almost helping the investigators and you're really digging into things. And yes, you do have to have sometimes a an outside look on things to try and help out the situation and sometimes we have to help officers or firefighters whoever find the location that they're looking for or give them extra details to help them out in their job. There is an investigative aspect to it, but it's definitely not like the TV shows. And then you have, the officers and everything. They aren't dealing with stuff exactly like the TV shows do. It's not always being the hero in sunshine and roses, right? So just something to think about if you've thought about the career because of some of the TV shows and movies. Kind of think. I mean, that's pretty much all of the negatives. Also dealing with a city government sometimes or a smaller government of any type. Um, they're going to do things you don't like, and that's just the reality of it. Hopefully, you get into a place that treats their employees well, or at least pays you well. Um, so if you don't like politics, well, sorry, sometimes it's got to be there. Now, it's not as bad as when I had my stint in code enforcement, I was dealing directly with those politics, and I did not like that whatsoever. But in 911, you hear about it. You know that the government you work for goes through changes and things that you may not like, but other than that, it's not bad at all. Excuse me, guys. So yeah, that's pretty much all of the negatives. The positives can be endless. I mean, it's a really fulfilling career. Like I said, you do sometimes get to be the hero, and it's rewarding to know that you've helped out in some kind of way. And it's rewarding to know that you can be in super high stress situations and keep your cool, keep calm, and just kind of get through it. I mean, it's just really rewarding. Also, some of the people I've met along the way have been some of the most amazing people I've met. I've met some bad ones too, but I mean, some of the good ones have been some of the best I've ever known. You'll definitely form a different kind of relationship with people. It's not your typical sit by the water cooler work acquaintance friendships. I mean, some of these are actually there's people I actually like to and want to hang out with outside of work. That's kind of rare to find in a lot of careers. So, I mean, there's plenty of positives to it. You just gotta I don't know how to describe it really. It's almost like you be like Bane and I was born and something like that. It's something that is just kind of an innate part of you that I can't even describe. But you'll know it. If you want to do it and you get into it, you'll know it. So now the process of actually getting hired on. How do you do that? Well, of course, we've talked about the GED and high school diploma. Some things you want to know going into the interview process or into the testing process, I should say, is before you'll send in your application and everything. And from the moment you do that, I would get whatever area you're applying for. Let's say you're applying for your town that you live in. Go up to your local chamber of commerce, your courthouse, wherever. See if they have any pocket maps of the area. I know for us, it's the Chamber of Commerce that has the little maps that they can tear out of a book and hand you a whole map of the city. Basically, it has all the streets of it on it and everything. And try and get a map of your area. Worst case scenario, you go on to Google Maps and get an aerial view and just kind of study it. You want to drive, not necessarily. Don't just go drive to the bad parts of your town. Okay, sorry, but drive around, take routes that you haven't taken before. Take a look at all the streets that you never knew were there, and you want to understand how your city is laid out. For most cities, that's going to be more of a gridlocked thing because mid-century, you know, United States is was very gridlocked. It had a lot of, you know, a lot of cities have your numbered streets, so like first, second, third, fourth, all the way to 120th or however many streets your city has, right? Those will be going basically east and west and like ascending or descending as they go up. And then you have your named streets that run north and south. And a lot of streets have the same street names. MLK is a street name I don't know any city that doesn't have it. Jefferson, I think maybe Ferguson is a popular one. The state named streets, so Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Alabama. There's themes to streets, right? That's for most cities in the United States. They're going to have some kind of theme to the way they set out their streets. And you maybe even stop by your city planner's office. Get a feel for how the city's laid out and everything. Now, are they going to have time to deal with you? Probably not. But hey, you could try. District study is basically what I'm getting at. Know how your city's laid out and know how to describe locations. If you were to have to babysit or tell an officer or somebody from the public how to get from the police department to a certain place, be able to tell them how to get there. And it helps knowing places because also you can picture it in your mind. If someone were to call 911 and say, "Hey, I'm next to the Big Lots," you know where that is, you know where to go, you know how to get there, and you can send officers to the Big Lots. Plus, hopefully your system has landmarks in it where it has the address. But that's the basic reason why you would need to know kind of your district and how everything is laid out and how to get to certain places. But a lot of agencies will have like training videos of a dispatcher in a room by themselves taking a whole bunch of calls. And what you're going to have to do is listen in and write down important details to those calls so that you can be tested on it later. So you'll get a test saying what was the address for the domestic disturbance call, or what was the name of the person that had a knife in this parking lot. It's going to be random questions, but that are pertinent to that call. So write down everything you think is important, and they'll test you on that information later. So that's generally what they'll do for like the first testing phase. Once you go through that testing phase, pretty much the top people that scored the highest on those tests are probably going to be called back for interviews. During the interview, of course, every agency is different. Of course, they can't ask you questions that are barred by federal and state governments that you can't ask. They're not going to ask you anything like that. So they're not going to ask you like age and are you pregnant and things of that nature. But um, now also keep in mind, just because they won't ask you age, there are some departments that may require you to be 21 or older due to the certifications you may receive when you join. I know some departments not necessarily dual certify their dispatchers, but they deal with certain things involving like evidence reports and things that by law you're required to be 21 or older if you deal with those type of documents or the evidence. So just keep that in mind. You may have an age requirement when you join, but you'll know that right from the moment you put in your application. That's not going to be anything that they're going to have to ask you in the interview room. Every agency is going to be different on their questions. They may ask you questions that seem a little, not rude, seem a little out there, or seem like a not real situation. I know one of the questions that we sometimes ask in our interviews is if you were to take a call for a family member and you had another call coming in, and this call is this, your family member's call is that, which one do you take? And it's kind of a thing to test, like, can you I mean, people are going to be sentimental with their family, right? I mean, it just happens. It's the nature of humans. But it's kind of to gauge, do you have any sense of which one's higher priority? Like, let's say your family member stubbed their toe and needs an ambulance, but this person over here is being chased by someone with a knife. I mean, that's an extreme situation. Of course, you're going to take the call with someone being chased by a knife and get the details on that real quick. Things like that can be important to know if they have any sense of priority in their mind as to which way to go with that scenario. So I can't really offer you much advice on the interview process other than try and think like a dispatcher. Try and understand what calls are higher priority. Try and think about what you would do in a high stress situation. And these are things you need to be thinking about as you're getting hired on anyway, or going through the process, because once you get into it, it's not too late, but it is too late, right? You don't want to get into the process and then all of a sudden your first week you're um, blubbering into your keyboard and wondering why you did this, because the people that you're going into work with probably have been shorthanded for quite a while, and so it's not going to make them very happy to know that okay, well, they're not getting any help anytime soon, and they're gonna have to work. Overtime's good for the money, but then they're gonna have to spend more time on overtime, and they're gonna have to come into work more often, or their schedule is still gonna be messed up. Just some things to think about. I tried to make this a little shorter. It's still probably gonna be a little long, but I appreciate you guys joining in. I hope that you get that dispatching job that you want. If you have any questions, throw them down in the comments. We'll answer them as they come. I'll recruit some people to answer some questions with me, and maybe if you're from a different state that you're wanting to apply for 911 in that state or that jurisdiction, we'll see if we can find somebody that's from that area and can tell you kind of the process in that area or in that state if there's any special regulations or considerations that you need to know about. But until next time, if you have to call 911, remember to keep dialing up those details. See ya.